All right, I think we are live.
Woo!
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Stake Your Wealth Live Edition.
That's right.
Your co-hosts, Greg and Mary Daphne,
Yes, that's right.
where we talk about all things related to finance, personal finance, financial independence, smart investments,
Financial literacy.
We run the gamut, and our live sessions are an opportunity to go deeper into the lessons that we also release on a weekly basis. And this week's lesson was, I think, a really important one to me personally.
Yeah, it's very good.
And
I think it's one of my favorites so far.
yeah, I really like it. It's about the sort of the risks of chasing wealth and why chasing money specifically it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like it might work. You might accumulate substantial wealth, but what did you have to sacrifice because of that? Right?
Yeah.
So that's one way of looking at it.
And you're right that sometimes you actually do get the money you're looking for, but then you discover, oh, well, I have all this money, but this doesn't feel like I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, it felt differently. Like it seemed like it would be different. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
In your mind.
And you hear this time and time again.
Yeah. So interesting.
Where wealthy people who climb their way to the top, get up their top in sort of the economic sense. They get up there, right? And suddenly they are, by all objective definitions, wealthy.
Yeah.
And they say, this doesn't feel much better, right?
Yeah, are they happy?
Yeah, I don't feel more at peace. Yeah. I don't feel like I have fewer problems. So all these things that we think money is going to
solve or cure,
yeah.
Doesn't necessarily
it doesn't do that. And again, you can look at there are countless examples of this. There are a small number of people who literally for them money is their source of happiness. But even for those people, it doesn't replace the importance, like we're humans, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't replace the importance
of like good social connections.
Yeah.
People that you can call at like 4 a.m. and
friends, right? Good friends.
Or even family members that you can wake up at that time.
Yeah, well, friends can be family members.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and no, absolutely. So, the money portion of it is only one part of your security. And there's this great study, or it's the only one part of your sort of mental stability. Mm-hmm. There was this great study that showed how after a certain point, an increase in your net worth didn't equate to an increase in happiness.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the Maslow hierarchy. It's like not that much. Like beyond, I don't know what number it was. We should check it, but maybe it was.
I know what it was. I don't know
what it's now.
What the inflation adjusted amount would be.
Okay.
But the amount is, first of all, it's not in a major city. So outside a major city.
Yeah.
So just this, and this is in America. So in America, once a household makes more than $75,000 a year.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I was,
after that point. Right. So up to that point, each dollar you make increases your happiness by a larger amount, right?
Right, because you can maybe have the food that you want to have access to, the amenities in your house or your apartment.
Yeah, it's paying for basic comforts and needs.
Yeah, basic comforts, to have a roof over your head and to, clothe yourself and the people around you and your family and have food on the table.
To be able to feed yourselves.
And then after that, it's not much of a
once you get past that, it's
increase.
like, okay, now I'm instead of buying
a Gap
Value
t-shirt.
brand.
Yeah, it's like a Prada shirt.
I'm buying the luxury brand.
Right.
But does that really make me happier?
Right.
It's still a shirt. A shirt's a shirt.
I think for a while, like people might find the thrill of it. Of doing that, of being able to go and purchase something like a high ticket item. And then I think that wanes, right? And
I think a while is an overstatement.
Really?
In my experience, it's really fleeting.
Yeah.
So the example I love to bring up is...
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Eating out one? A restaurant?
Sort of. Yeah,
okay.
That's it. Yeah. She knows me so well. It's because she has to deal with my preaching 24/7. The example I love is I had this investment banking internship when I was in college, my junior year. And I'm actually releasing a video about that next week that talks about sort of how that caused all kinds of other psychological challenges for me. But the one I want to talk about right now is one of the cool perks of being an intern there is we could order food for for any
Lunch, dinner.
for dinner specifically.
Yeah.
So lunch you're on your own, but dinner if you were working past I think it was like 7 p.m., which as an investment banking intern you're
Easy to
definitely
do.
working
Yeah,
past
it's
7
easy to
p.m.
do.
You can order food and it's on the company.
Right.
Right. So I
And
went
dinner in
nuts.
New York is expensive.
And dinner in New York is
Yeah,
expensive.
I mean,
and you get like I think like a $35 limit.
that's more than enough to. Yeah.
Or at least a $35 subsidy.
And that was what, 10 years ago?
This was, I think, more than 10 years ago. Gosh, maybe 10.
So
Yeah.
now it'd be probably like $45 or $50.
Yeah, I think of it as like a $50 meal.
lot.
I mean, you can get a lot with that,
Yeah.
particularly as a college student, right?
Yeah.
So here I am as a college kid, and I have access to the entirety of New York's restaurants that a college student would be interested in: burgers, sushi, all this stuff. And I just went for it, ramen, right? I just went for it. So, and it sounds amazing, and there were no consequences to me buying this, right?
Right.
And so, anyways,
Well, it was almost encouraged, right? Because if you are ordering food at that time, that means you're working at that time.
right. Well, that was their idea. Their idea is
That's the way they
we'll
incentivize.
incentivize them
Yeah.
to stay late and work long
Right.
hours.
Right.
And it worked.
It worked.
And so I would order this food. But what quickly started happening was I lost my appreciation for it, right? So early on, I was, just this abundance of all
Novelty.
the novelty of all these great restaurant foods. And within like 2 or 3 weeks, I remember just like scanning all the different restaurants and like, do I want this? I don't know. I just had a burger yesterday, and I don't know if I'm really feeling like sushi today. All these nice things are treats. Were no longer treats.
Right.
And when I would go out to restaurants with my family, that was always something special to do. Suddenly it was just like, oh,
I've actually been here already.
I've already been
Order
here. This
takeout.
menu bores me. You start to, it loses its glamour
Yeah.
and novelty.
Yeah.
And that's a really important lesson, because the same thing happens with your wealth more broadly speaking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once you can afford your first nice car, okay, yeah, you get this rush. But then it's like, okay, so I have a Mercedes. Now I want to upgrade to, a Porsche. And so now I have my entry-level Porsche. Now I want to upgrade to my
The newest.
my 911 GT.
And then a McLaren.
And then but the point is, and then you go into your boats and your jets and,
and your
none
yachts
of that and your yachts.
private islands.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but it's all incremental. There's no real sort of intrinsic sense of pleasure that you get from these things.
I think it becomes more of a burden, right? Because you need someone to then like take care of your yacht, and then you need someone to or not occupy necessarily, but watch over one of your properties and another one of your properties.
Yeah.
And, fix that car.
Yeah, as
that jet.
I can't remember if it was Jay-Z or Notorious B.I.G., but more money, more
problems.
more problems. Yeah, and it's really, really true. That doesn't mean that you can't do cool things with money. You can.
There's a lot that you can do.
But what I talk about in this video is this sort of mindless, relentless pursuit of money, and as money as your objective.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's a hollow victory.
Yeah.
Is what I'm getting
Yeah.
at. It's a hollow victory because the money itself doesn't do much for you.
Yeah.
It
Beyond a certain
enables
point,
things.
right?
Beyond feeding you.
But that again is a pretty low number
Yeah.
in regards to what you might be thinking of.
And the reality is the majority of the people that are watching this are already pretty close to that point.
Yeah.
That's just a fact, right? If you have broadband internet and a smartphone to watch this on, you're already,
Or even a computer.
or a computer, right? You're already pretty far up the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
And so it's a really important lesson to remember, because then once you recognize that and start to shift your focus toward the things that really do matter to you, And that can be hard to figure out, by the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
But once you make that shift, then you start to get real sense of satisfaction, building a happy family.
Right. And these
Right.
like are usually immaterial things, right? That has nothing to do with, right, like building a good relationship. Maybe I don't know, doing some volunteer work, adopting a pet or adopting a child, or right, these things that can bring you extensive happiness that don't necessarily require
Yeah.
exorbitant,
Totally.
amounts of
they
money.
require a baseline amount of
Yeah,
money, right?
yeah.
If you're going to get a pet, well, you're looking at probably $5,000 a year,
Yeah.
right? That you need to make room for.
Right.
So maybe make $5,000 more. But the value of that pet far exceeds the $5,000 in itself,
Yeah,
right?
right.
If you instead spent that $5,000 on a slightly fancier car, let's just say you upgraded from normal seats to heated seats,
Oh,
or
okay.
from
Like
the
faux leather
fabric
to real
leather.
leather.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. There's a very small amount of increased pleasure from that. Put that same $5,000 instead into a pet,
Yeah.
and you can get enormous amount
Yeah.
of pleasure from
Yeah.
that. Understanding how money is more
A
of
tool, right?
of a
That's what you're
tool.
saying.
Yeah, and
An enabler.
it's an enabler.
Yeah.
And we have another video coming out on that as well. How one of the most healthy ways to treat money, to think about money, is it being a tool, right, as opposed to
a couple of this is now from one of our a conversation 200 conversations ago.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to.
So like 2 days ago.
Yeah. I think it was maybe a Tim Ferriss interview,
Uh-huh.
but it was about stoicism
Mm-hmm.
and how are your material objects ruling you? Do you possess your material objects, or do they possess you?
Yeah. What is
Right?
what is the line? Yeah. It's be careful with your possessions, because they will possess you.
Right.
Right.
And this is I've got goosebumps. That's so
Yeah.
just whoa, right? It's very poignant.
Yeah.
I think it was a Stoic,
I believe it's based in the teachings of Seneca.
Seneca. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I first realized that, or not first, but when I really started to realize that, was when we moved. So we were living in a studio in New York for several years. And we then decided, after getting married, that we'd move to Asia.
Yeah.
And just have an adventure. And
To
so
allow us to travel.
to allow us to travel, it actually started us on the YouTube
Yeah, that's
journey.
right. Yeah.
But in any event, we had to sell everything, right? Because we're not going to travel around the world with
Lugging, our dishware.
TVs, couches, all that stuff. So we sold everything.
Yeah.
And each time we got rid of something, my heart felt a little lighter.
Lighter. Yeah.
Yeah, and each
And it's funny-
material possession I got rid of, I felt more free.
And what's funny that the fact that you say that is because Greg's already a minimalist, which is I think an admirable quality, definitely. So the fact that somebody who's a minimalist says that is really powerful, right? But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely baggage associated with what you accumulate, and I think for sentimental people, people who ascribe meaning to inanimate objects, because it might not even be right. It's sentimental value. It's not necessarily oh, this is worth blah 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 amount of dollars, so that's why I'm holding on to it. It's more of, oh, this is something that has been in the family for a long time, or this dear friend of mine gave it to me.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with the monetary value. Yet somehow you still see that maybe there's a lot of stuff. Right, so that stuff can be costing you in terms of storage, and maybe you need to get a bigger house and a bigger garage and a bigger this. And I feel that's a part that's very related to what is enough.
Yeah, that the cost of the footprint is a very real cost.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that, but Google Assistant just chimed in. She does that sometimes. We don't know why. She's always listening. That's
Always
all right.
listening.
Thank you, Google.
Thank you,
You're
Google.
wonderful.
Yeah. Pretty fun.
So yeah, absolutely.
The idea of enough and what does that mean?
Right. there was something related to that I was going to address
Before Google interrupted.
before
Yeah.
Google got me off track. Well, it'll come to me, but in terms
Yeah.
in terms of what you're saying,
Yeah. The carbon footprint. Is
yeah,
that what
well,
you're talking about?
not the carbon footprint, but the physical footprint.
Oh, the
is
physical.
something
Yeah, yeah,
that you
yeah.
have to keep in mind,
Yeah.
right? If you want to hold on to things that are sentimental, and sentimental value is a much trickier topic than monetary value.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I
I'm
just
definitely
remembered.
very sentimental. So like,
Yes.
I'll keep like birthday cards from like 10 years ago, or
Yes.
so yeah, I'm becoming a little bit better about it now, and like maybe I'll take a picture of that, and then if I really like the card, then I'll keep it like a physical copy. But I'm like very sentimental, so it definitely is more challenging in terms of like not accumulating things. But I think you have to sort of like draw the line somewhere.
Mhm.
And it's really nice. Like I also like I go through multiple periods of time where I give away a lot of like stuff, like clothing and shoes and bags, and it's such a nice feeling. Like that
Yeah.
feeling that you had, because it's like I know it's gonna go to good. Like it'll help someone, and that's just a really nice feeling. This is a little tangential, but I want to say it anyway.
Go for it.
It's really off topic, but I just want to say it quickly.
Just say it.
Okay. So apparently, so I have a good friend, and she was moving, and instead of giving her clothes away, she's international. She's actually from Japan, and she put it in the dumpster. And I said, well, maybe you could have like given it to Salva, but she didn't know, because in Japan you actually have to pay to throw your clothes out. So and they incinerate it, I think.
Right.
So in Japan, like they give it away, they don't give it away, they just throw it out. And so she felt so badly about it because she didn't know that there was that option. So I think, every culture has a different way of dealing with accumulating.
Yeah. Well, that's a fascinating one, because in Japan,
Yeah.
no one has space.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And they're minimalists
because
already.
basically housing
So-
spaces in general are just very small in Japan, and it's partly an aesthetic choice.
Yeah.
But some of these dense cities, it's just real estate is very expensive. So if you've ever been to a hotel in Japan,
very cozy.
very cozy,
Very
and if you've
cozy.
never been and you're booking a room, expect it to be half the size of what you expect.
Don't bring a lot of stuff.
Don't bring a lot of stuff. And so by charging people to get rid of things,
Yeah.
that's a clever way of preventing them from overbuying.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you overbuy stuff, you have to start to purge your things every
Yeah.
now and then.
Right.
And if it costs you to purge, then you're going to think more carefully about
Yeah.
buying in the first place.
So here she was so happy. She was elated that she didn't have to pay for throwing it out. I'm guessing somebody might have, found it, and maybe they like brought it to Salvo, or maybe they
Yeah.
used it themselves. So I don't think it went to waste, but it's interesting, right? Because every culture has a different way of dealing with accumulation and enough. So let's talk about, how do you define enough for yourself? Like my question
Before we
here.
do,
Okay.
because
yeah.
I remember what I was going to say
Oh,
before.
perfect.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad it came to you.
So one of the key ways to okay, so the topic of this is more
Is
isn't
not
always better,
better, yeah.
right? And part of that's because we were talking about the idea that possessions own you,
Yeah.
possess you. One of the key ways to prevent your material possessions from possessing you
Yeah.
is to make sure that you're not spending more than is comfortable on something, right? Always buy things at a tier or two
Oh, right.
below what
Yep.
you can afford.
Yeah. Because
right?
you can replace it.
If
you
you're
won't
right
cry
at,
over it.
if you're right at the threshold of what you can afford, or buy something that you're on a payment plan for, that's going to start to own you. I should really do a video about this.
Do a video about
but
this.
but that will start to own
It'll
you.
stress you, because you'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to drop that, like, I don't know, $1,000 vase. I don't
You
know,
obsess
just
about it
making
because
up,
you know
but-
you can't replace it,
Yeah.
right? If as soon as you render something replaceable, you worry much less about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why if you buy something that's for your level of wealth considered cheap, it's much less of a burden on your soul,
Yeah.
right? On your mind, because you know if it breaks, you can just get a new one. And so I've subscribed to that in everything that I buy.
Yeah.
And it makes it much easier for me to use the items.
Yep.
Because it's like, if it breaks, whatever. I just, I get another one.
Right. On a similar note, because it made me think of something. It's same with like these luxury goods. Like you might have a couple of these or one of these, but you might not ever use it because you don't want to damage it, or ruin it, or you know, if one scratch mark on the leather is going to, you know, throw you into a frenzy, I think then you have to reassess, like, why did you get that in the first place? Why did you spend all that money on getting it if you're not even going to enjoy it? If you're going to enjoy it, it's going to give you pleasure to just wear that bag because maybe it's a status symbol, not a status symbol, but a symbol of your hard earned work, right? What am I saying? Your hard work.
Yeah.
It's well earned. You know, maybe you spent a whole summer toiling over this whatever type of internship and you were able to buy that item. So it's a symbol of your hard work. Then I think that's a healthier way of looking at it. But if you're just going to lock it up and not ever use it, then that's a little bit like, you know, I've done that before. And
But that's, I mean, it defeats the purpose of having it,
It
right?
defeats the
You
purpose
turn
of
it
having
into a
it.
museum item.
Yeah.
Even a museum item, you get the public to see it and appreciate it.
Yeah.
If you lock it up and don't use it, then it's like, well,
Why do you have it?
It's in fact only an expense because it's taking up space.
Right. So my point is, like, get what you want to get. Don't get 20 of them. Get one of them if you can afford it, because if it's replaceable, and then use it because that's the point of getting it, right? In the first place.
Yeah.
So how do people define enough?
Yeah. I mean,
And then I have another related question.
Okay.
Okay. To piggyback off of that. What if you get to used to a certain lifestyle? Maybe you're in a country where you can afford certain things that you couldn't in another country, or maybe you have a job that you can afford certain things. Okay, you get the picture, and you get used to this like lifestyle where you might be going out to brunch every Saturday, or, you know, buying yourself a new outfit every, I don't want to say day, but I guess there are people who do that every month, maybe. Yeah. So how do you then recalibrate if you now think, well, that's enough for me? Maybe that's enough for someone doing that. Having that very like highfalutin like lifestyle, like going like what if someone says I want to go to brunch every.
So you're asking two questions. One is
Yes.
how to define enough, and two, how do you deal with lifestyle inflation, right? Which is redefining
Perfect.
enough.
Yes.
Okay. So the first, in terms of defining enough, it really comes down to setting up your priorities, right? And this is also something I want to do a video about. But
We should be writing these down so
I know.
you remember.
I'm going to bring a pad of paper next time.
Okay.
But what was the first one? Oh, not letting your possessions own you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the second one is this. So yeah, really defining your priorities, right? Because by understanding your priorities, you can start to ascribe value based on those priorities, right? Value is a subjective thing that we talked about in Your True Cost,
Yes.
right? And it's about how much benefit you're getting from it.
Right.
And so once you start to understand your priorities, you can ascribe a certain amount of benefit that you're getting from certain things.
So maybe the brunch, you replace that with going out, doing a picnic or doing a potluck.
Yeah, well, let's talk about food. So,
Yeah.
so for some people, what's important about food is that they're eating healthily, right?
For some people.
Yes.
Okay.
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 And so they're willing to spend more on organic food or farmers market food because that extra money, they're not going to the farmers market because they want to, you know, signal that they can afford farmers market food. They're going to the farmers market because they know that that's been produced with care and, you know, fewer chemicals.
They build
and so
relationships
forth.
with the
They like
farmers.
the relationship, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's sort of their value from that. For other people, that might not be as important, right? They don't necessarily subscribe to the idea of organic food. They think that, you know, it could be misregulated, and they're happy just getting sort of standard supermarket fare.
Right.
So for those people, those are two different versions of enough,
Yeah.
right? For one person,
Yeah.
that supermarket food is not enough, and they're going to have a lot of cognitive dissonance until they
Right.
can get something a step above that.
Right. Right.
For the other person, it is enough, right? So understanding what your priorities are can help you start to determine, you know, how much do you need to allocate.
And not
to
just
certain
doing
things.
one thing or another because your friends do it or because you're told to do it,
Right.
just because someone's telling you or you see it on Instagram to do it.
Unless your priority is to sort of signal to your friends
Yeah.
that you can afford this stuff, which is probably a
Pretty-
red flag in
Yeah,
its own
I
right.
was about to say, but
So the point simply is you can define enough by figuring out what your priorities are, calculating the cost of that, and then you know, setting that number as a target and not exceeding it, right? And that's where we get onto the lifestyle inflation, which is, you have to be careful. Once you set the target, you don't want to increase it unless you have the funds to do so, right?
Right.
So once you set a bar at something, you get used to it, then you start to want something above that bar.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, unless you're expanding into new categories,
Mhm.
if you're expanding within the same category,
Like
which
food, you're saying?
like
Yeah.
food, like going fancier and fancier restaurants, oftentimes what's happening is you've lost sight of your priorities,
Right.
right? Your priority was to be able to eat out and have a special, experience
Right.
outside of the home. You can do that at a simple restaurant the same way you can do it at a fancy restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're starting to go to fancier restaurants, ask yourself, is this really, me fulfilling my priorities? Or is it just me seeking novelty
Yeah.
and using money as a tool to seek novelty?
Right.
Right.
Or maybe like that brunch is a way to like get together with friends. So you can, instead of paying, I don't know, $20 for an avocado toast in New York, maybe you do, something a little bit simpler, or you rotate houses.
Yeah, exactly.
And-
People come
and,
over and
you
cook
know,
each other breakfast.
You can buy 10 avocados.
That's a great example, right?
Right? Because thinking about like the why, what is my incentive to do this? Is it to go out and to eat? Maybe that is then, and it's a culinary adventure, and you get some food bloggers together, and you maybe blog about it, and you can maybe earn some income from that, turn it into a side hustle. Or maybe it's like about the social interaction aspect.
Yep.
And then you can do it on the cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. And so, tying the sort of loose threads together here, the idea is that more isn't always better, and specifically more money isn't always better, because with more money, as we discussed at the beginning,
More money, more problems.
you get more problems, you have more things to take care of, you have more burdens, right? Particularly if you start to buy things that are expensive for you relative to your net worth, those things become sources of anxiety.
Right, they start to rule you.
Right, they start to possess you. And so
Scary stuff.
by sort of identifying your priorities
Mm-hmm.
and setting a cost threshold or an expense threshold that meets your priorities, but is also below your earning potential, or your actual earnings, I should say, because your potential could be much higher.
Yeah, it's true.
But below your real earnings, all of that can come together to make a much more rich and fulfilled life, right? That doesn't necessarily mean, doesn't require more to get that fulfillment, and instead just requires some hard work at understanding who you are and what your needs are.
Right. And also maybe like if you're geographically agnostic or flexible, maybe you can, if you like a certain standard of living, maybe you move to a country or a city or a town that can offer you the same things or the things that you want at a lower price.
Geographic arbitrage.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you should make a video about that too.
I know. That's 3 ideas.
So many ideas. All right.
All right. We'll wrap up there. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And as always, if you have ideas, comments, questions, throw them in the comments, and we will address them as best we can.
That's right.
So have a great weekend, and we'll catch you in our next live stream next week.
Happy wealth staking.